So I bike, by the way. I've done like in previous years 2 times STP, which is a Seattle to Portland 2-day event. Your butt sore, your legs sore, your back is sore. We still do it. And people ask me, why do you do this? My response is, I love that struggle. I love biking. And you will see that in tech too, it's going to be a lot of struggle. Make sure that you are willing to go through the struggle, because there's no reward without a struggle. It's super important to define and measure success. And I say this because at some point in the COVID times, there was a race for offers. Like the Microsoft would give an offer, Amazon would give a different offer, there's all kinds of things, right? And you might be working in Amazon, your friend just got an offer from Microsoft with a higher salary, right? And you're like, okay, he's more successful than me, right? So you got to think about these stuff, right? I think you have to define what does success mean for you, what does failure mean for you, and go from there. Earning trust is super important at every level. And there are 2 aspects to trust. One is it takes time. Second one is it's consistently keeping up your promises. So a lot of new hires come to me saying, look, hey, I'm not involved in a particular meeting. So I ask them, like, are you adding any value there? Right? In many cases, you got to earn a seat in the table. And it's a snowball effect. The more you earn that trust, you're going to get more responsibility. Like, it keeps growing like a snowball. One simple thing when you start a career is, whatever is given to you, do it really well. We joke, like, look, if you're asked to go bring a coffee, go do that really well, right? That earns trust, right? So don't worry about the jobs being big or small, but do the job really well, right? Because at the end of the day, right, we want people who we can depend on and give work to. When we go do evaluation of interns, one of the most common things I've seen is mentors complaining that the intern doesn't tell them when they're blocked. So being super proactive in communicating, like, what's your status? I'm blocked or not blocked. Look, everybody's busy in these corporate companies. We have too many things going on. So the last thing they want to do is guess what you're doing. So be super proactive, communicate your blockers, communicate statuses, and avoid surprises. That's the last thing people want. The other thing I've seen, like really solid like SD1s, they're very proactive. So for example, at some point when I was working in Microsoft, we had somebody who was new from college, started working on a system, and we had a lot of bugs in our system. This guy took a challenge saying, look, I want to build this thing with 0 bugs. And we were like, okay, give it a shot. And he actually built a feature with 0 bugs. And he introduced something called test-driven development into our teams, essentially, at that point of time. He brought in people from the TDD community in Microsoft, gave presentation, influenced the org to go and adopt it. And we made a huge stride in TDD over a period of the next 1 year. So nobody told him that he should do it, right? So you can either do your job or you can go beyond it, like, and do more. That's what I mean by proactive. Folks come and tell me, look, I'm not getting promoted. I have I'm doing a lot of things, essentially, right? I'm super busy. My work-life balance is bad. So I asked them, like, what's the impact, essentially? Are you just doing busy work, or is there an impact, right? And I bring this up because, again, in the AI era, every product manager have to be a little bit technical, and every technology person have to be a little bit product manager, right? So you got to ask, why am I doing this? What is the impact? It's more important to know the art of making a decision than the decision itself. When all the data is available in front of you, it's quite easy to make a decision. When you don't have all the data, how do you make a decision? That's an art. And your job is not to make many decisions. It's really to make few high-quality critical decisions. So we were launching a product at Amazon. How do you price it? Well, you can go and do some market analysis. It'll give you something. But then you don't know if you price it at $1, what adoption will you get? If you price at $5, what adoption will you get? Or should we do it free? Is it a one-way door to go do free? Or is it a one-way door to charge a little bit of money, essentially? So for us, like, if we charge a little bit of money, we can always go back to free if we do the optimization, right? So the other way was a one-way door. So one-way door is a great mechanism you can use to make decisions.
Today, we have Dinek Kothottil.
Yep.
He is a very experienced guy. You worked at Coinbase, AWS, Microsoft. Right now, you're the VP of Engineering at DataRobot, and you're going to tell us a little bit more about the non-technical side, the leadership part, and take it away. Yeah. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So super excited to be here. So a small group, so please make it interactive. Ask me any questions. I thought, when Yuri asked me for the talk, I thought I'll go through a bunch of sharing learnings that I've had in the last 20 years working in tech and product. So that will be the theme of today's topic. So quick intro, so I am the VP of Engineering for a company called DataRobot. And if you don't know, we'll play a quick video. And it's an agentic platform company, which means that if you are an enterprise and you want to build your own agent, you got to go through a bunch of tools to build the agent, like develop it, deploy it, govern it. So we build that end-to-end platform essentially. We are on all kinds of clouds, GCP, Azure, AWS. We are on on-premises, self-managed instances everywhere. And I used to work for DynamoDB, which I don't know if you know, it's a multi-region database, NoSQL database. Not many cloud products are multi-region. They're typically in one region. And within the region, there are many availability zones to make it highly available. But if you think about if you think about DynamoDB, it's a multi-region product, which means that you can go write your data into a US region, replicate the data into a Europe region. So it's a very hard problem to solve. Not many products out there in the market that does that. To give you some sense of scale, it's about 150 million requests per second, 99.999% SLA, and still give you single millisecond latency, essentially. I've also worked in another database product called RDS and Aurora, which is the relational database systems at Amazon. Coinbase, I was leading their crypto applications, which is staking and wrap tokens and bridging and things like that. And SQL Azure and many other teams in Microsoft. So, this is the place where I have to switch the video. So let me quickly run through this video just to give you a sense of what DataRobot is.
AI agents are not the future, they are here, and they are the new digital workforce working alongside us. They understand, they decide, and they act.
Agents are going to do the work, and humans are going to manage how work gets done.
Agents are everywhere. They are autonomous, multimodal, and operate in real time.
So how do you bring a new digital workforce into your enterprise?
What you have today is not going to get you where you want to go.
The technology you use now is going to change, and it's going to change fast.
The same tech and the way you've worked before isn't going to work anymore. It needs a new approach.
The critical leap isn't just better language models.
Powered by the right data, the right integration into the process workflow, and the right orchestration and governance, they are right now defining how every enterprise runs.
So that was a quick peek into DataRobot. Happy to talk about the company too. So of the companies and technical roles, I do a few non-profit leadership roles. I'm part of a committee called Global Council for Responsible AI. We just did a new framework for responsible AI in World Economic Forum. It's called GRACE. So I was one of the authors for that. I'm also part of an institution called the Govardhan Eco Village in India, which is a sustainability built model. It's a UN-funded, UN-accredited institution in India too. So when I look at my last 20 years at work, the first few years, I always felt as an engineer, writing the best code is what takes me higher up in the career. And then when I look back, I realized that it's not really a tech problem. Well, it's a tech problem for sure, but it's not just that. It's sometimes a people problem. It's sometimes a business problem, right? It's sometimes a mindset problem, right? So I thought, what would I like to know if I were in the 20s? And that's kind of what I want to share today. So please stop me anytime you want. Happy to answer any question. Let's make it super interactive. So it's got 3 phases here. Sort of a pre-career, which is like before you go join a company or corporate. Second one is sort of like early career, maybe the first 1 year or 2 years, and then the long haul. That's kind of how I've divided it. Right? So start with the pre-career. One of the things, I don't know if anybody bikes or go to the gym, or like, you guys bike? Have you done like a 200 plus mile biking? Right?
Definitely gym, but bike
Do you go to gym every day?
Yeah.
Okay.
definitely.
Is it possible to get a great physique but not do the hard work in the gym? It's not possible, right? So I bike, by the way. I've done like in previous years 2 times STP, which is a Seattle to Portland 2-day event. So when we do the training, we typically do almost 1,000 mile in that season in a few months' time. And it's a tough ride because you do like 111 mile the first day, maybe 120, and then another 100 miles the next day, or a little under 100. So you struggle a lot, right? Like your butt sore, your legs sore, your back is sore. We still do it. And people ask me, why do you do this? Right? So my response is, I love that struggle. I love biking, right? And all the struggle that come with it, I love it. And you will see that in tech too, it's going to be a lot of struggle. Tech, marketing, business, any job you pick. And you got to make sure that you pick the struggles you love. If you ask me, will I like to run marathon? I don't, but I love to do biking. So that's a struggle I'm willing to go through. So what I'm trying to recommend here is, whether you want to go into tech, business, marketing, first thing to think about is, make sure that you are willing to go through the struggle, right? Because there's no reward without a struggle, right? So that's the first recommendation I want to give to you all. And the second one is, it's super important to define and measure success. And I want to give an example. It's a public example. Do you guys know Dave Mustaine by any chance? He's a guitarist. So he was kicked out in 1983 from a band with no warning, nothing. Super upset. Went through a very tough time. And he decided that he wanted to build a band that's even more popular than the band that was kicked out from. And he did great. His band is called Megadeth, and it's a heavy metal band. They sold about 20-30 million records in the world. But publicly he said that he considered his life a failure. Do you know which band he was kicked out from? Any guesses? Metallica.
I was going to say
Oh, that's a good guess. Yes.
Yeah.
That's the
The only band I know, yeah.
Yeah, so Metallica sold about 150 million records or something like that, right? Plus minus. So the problem here is, if you think about like relatively, he's super successful. His band sold 20-30 million copies. But his comparison point here is Metallica, right? So this is why it's important, like when you get into career and any job, it's important to define success, right? How do you measure yourself, right? What metrics do you assign to sort of like look at success and failure? That is super important, right? And I say this because at some point in the COVID times, there was a race for offers. Like the Microsoft would give an offer, Amazon would give a different offer, there's all kinds of things, right? And you might be working in Amazon, your friend just got an offer from Microsoft with a higher salary, right? And you're like, okay, he's more successful than me, right? So you got to think about these stuff, right? I think you have to define what does success mean for you, what does failure mean for you, and go from there, right? And so 2 principles I want to give you guys. Think about this. Longer run, it's going to help you. Now, early career. I'm sure, like, are you senior? Or yeah. You guys are seniors? Or okay. So next year, possibly going into the corporate world. Let me ask you, what did you think would be challenging in corporate world the first year? Any ideas or thoughts?
I feel like being able to be, because we're going to be brand new, being able to adjust quickly enough into the company and meet the metrics is something that I'm nervous about.
Yeah, very good point. What else?
I mean, well, we wake up and then we see news about AI and how everything is evolving and improving day by day. So learning new things every single day, getting adjusted to it, as she said.
Yeah.
But also adjusting to the company's rules and regulations, and then the team, because we as starters, we're different because Gen Z, right?
Yeah.
But then you're all like millennials or like older than, but you have more experience.
Yeah.
But adjusting to it, I guess.
Adjusting to the company culture. Yeah.
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 Everything.
Good point. You guys have any thoughts? What do you think?
Like relationship building.
Yeah.
Making sure you get along with coworkers.
Yeah.
Managers.
Very good point.
Networking.
Yeah. Cool. Shreya, and I forgot your name. Ilo. Yeah.
I would say also just like being in a new environment, like in a new team. Like now that we're entering the workforce, it's just going to be we're not like school or some type of break that we have.
Yeah.
It's just like adjusting to something new.
Very cool. Yeah.
I'm a freshman, so I'm still new, but I feel like when they talked about like adjusting to the culture and everything, I felt like I experienced that. I'm still experiencing that in campus.
Yeah.
And kind of getting to campus, it's so much more different than high school, where I've been the same routine with what I've been doing for the past like 12 years. So
Yeah.
for
By
sure.
the way, all the points were awesome. So I'm going to cover some of that in the slides. So let's go to the first one. All right. So I call it learn to operate before you build. Right? There's two parts of operating. It's a very different ball game if you build a software for grounds up versus working in a system that's been existing for years. I take example of DataRobot, 2012 company, right? Our code bases have been there from 2012. And every company will have a defined process culture into it. So one thing that I always recommend people coming into a new job is take some time, try to understand the team dynamics, right? Like as an example, like most companies have a stand-up culture, right? You show up at 9 a.m. in the morning, talk about what you're working on, what's blocking. You have to understand who the stakeholders are, right? Who are the tech leads in your project? Who is going to be the managing the project, right? There's also like processes the team follow, right? Another big thing, working in a big company like Amazon, Microsoft, like the tools and build systems, the deployment pipeline, very different, right? So I always recommend, take some time to understand, these things before you go and build a brand new feature. Super important, right? And we typically when we look at evaluation of employees, new hires, essentially, we look at how quickly did they onboard to our operational rotation, essentially, right? Can they fix a bug, right? Can they go and troubleshoot an operational issue? So it is super important. I've seen like all the successful engineers I've seen are very strong operating the systems, right? It goes back to the points that you're raising about like team as a culture, dynamics. You got to go and understand that, right? So the second thing I want to call out is I think you brought this like building relationship, right? I call it earning trust, right? Earning trust is super important at every level, right? Not just as a new joinee, but when I joined DataRobot, I have to re-earn trust, right? I join a new company, I have to re-earn trust, and there are two aspects to trust. One is it takes time, and you got to give time. Second one is it's consistently keeping up your promises. Right? So a lot of new hires come to me saying, look, hey, I'm not involved in a particular meeting. Nobody's involving me in a meeting, right? So I ask them, like, are you adding any value there? Right? In many cases, you got to earn a seat in the table. Does that make sense? Yeah? And it's a snowball effect. The more you earn that trust, right, like you're going to get more responsibility, it keeps growing like a snowball, right? And two things I usually call out is like one simple thing when you start a career is whatever is given to you, do it really well. We joke like, look, if you're asked to go bring a coffee, go do that really well, right? That earns trust, right? So don't worry about the jobs being big or small, but do the job really well, right? Because at the end of the day, right, we want people who we can depend on and give work to. So that's what we look at, right? So earning trust is super important. Any questions there? Does that make sense? Yeah. The third thing that I would say is be super proactive. I think you brought up the AI point. One of the opportunity that I see today in most tech companies is there is a huge AI transformation happening. Whether you're on the business side or on the tech side, right? grab that opportunity. Right? It's a choice whether you want to go with the flow or not. Right? You can go on either side. And I've seen a lot of people who resist the change. Right? So we have, to give an example, we have somebody whose specialty is working on distributed systems. But now we're trying to integrate a lot with NVIDIA's NeMo systems and NIMs and things like that. So even though this person doesn't have expertise on, NIMs and NeMo, like he raised his hand up. Look, I want to do it, right? And that is appreciated, right? So take that opportunity, grab that opportunity to see if you can be more proactive. Another thing about proactive is communication. So again, going back to the team dynamics, right? When we go do evaluation of interns and places where we don't do hire, like we have a hire or no hire decision at the end of the internship. One of the most common things I've seen is mentors complaining that the intern doesn't tell them when they're blocked on a work, right? So being super proactive in communicating, like, what's your status? I'm blocked or not blocked. Look, everybody's busy in these corporate companies. There are too many things going on. So the last thing they want to do is guess what you're doing. So be super proactive, communicate your blockers, communicate statuses, and avoid surprises. That's the last thing people want. Does that make sense? Yeah. And the other thing I've seen, like really solid, like SD1s and any employees who reported to me, is that they're very proactive. So for example, we had a person who, at some point when I was working in Microsoft, we had somebody who was new from college, started working on a system, and we had a lot of bugs in our system. So we were going through how do we fix bugs. And this guy took a challenge saying, look, I want to build this thing with 0 bugs. And we were like, okay, give it a shot. I mean, you might, and he actually built a feature with 0 bugs. And he introduced something called test-driven development into our teams, essentially, at that point of time. He brought in people from the TDD community in Microsoft, gave presentation, influenced the org to go and adopt it. And we made a huge stride in TDD over a period of the next 1 year. So nobody told him that he should do it, right? So you can either do your job or you can go beyond it, and do more. That's what I mean by proactive, right? Does that make sense? Yeah, the other thing, and one other thing that I notice is folks come and tell me, look, I'm not getting promoted. I have I'm doing a lot of things, essentially, right? I'm super busy. My work-life balance is bad. So I asked them, what's the impact, essentially? Are you just doing busy work, or is there an impact, right? And I bring this up because, again, in the AI era, every product manager have to be a little bit technical, and every technology person have to be a little bit product manager, right? So you got to ask, why am I doing this? What is the impact? So another example, Amazon have this process called our annual planning process. So as part of that, we spend a couple of months preparing for the process, allocating resourcing, and it's called OP planning, essentially. So what we do there is, in many cases, we have seen examples where the team come up and say, look, we want to improve developer productivity. And the most important feedback leaders give is, look, can you make it more qualitative and quantitative? What does that mean? Are we talking about reducing the time it takes to take a change from laptop to production, from 8 hours to 4 hours? Is that what you mean? So again, think about building smart goals. It's super important, right? At the end of the day, when you write a doc for your achievements, it's got to be impact based, right? But don't think about just busy work. Does that make sense? I guess that is true for college too. Is that correct? Do you guys have any examples of anything from your side where you focus on impact versus busy work?
I guess extracurriculars would be clubs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Trying to actually produce something. Like an example would be I joined a club in Seattle, and I wanted to help them with scaling their social media. So I took all the stuff that I learned here, that I taught myself with setting up all the tech stuff for recording and trying to get clips going for them.
Even for college admission, I'm sure the admission committee look at impact and not a bunch of work too, right? Is that kind of right? I mean, my kids have not gone to college yet, so.
I will say for
Yeah.
But they're not very specific on how they want to do that and what outcome they want out of that. It's very hard for them to target down, oh, we need more volunteers, or we need more students, or we just want more recognition on social media. So I guess that's a little...
Do you use SMART? S-M-A-R-T?
Yeah, that's actually something we talked about today. So.
Oh, really cool. Does anybody else have used SMART? Right? So it's a good framework, right? The idea is that, look, you got to make goals that are kind of measurable, achievable, smart, right? Like time bound, right? Example is you can't have a goal that is like reduce the number of bugs from 2,000 to 1,000 in 10 years, right? So it's got to be time bound too. It's an important factor. So again, I recommend as you go into the careers and things like that, think about making SMART goals, and it's a great thing to work with your manager in terms of defining SMART goals for yourself, right? It's super measurable, it's achievable, and it's trackable too. So don't do a lot of busy work essentially. Right. Well, okay. So I'm going to switch to any other questions that you have in your mind. What do I do in the first year of career? I'm happy to answer.
Not yet.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So think about, let me know. So I want to get to some of the long hauls, think about, right? So the first one is, in my career, my first few years, I was switched from one domain to the other. I've done application development, I've done database development. What I've seen over a period of the last 20 years is, as you get to higher leadership positions, you got to have a superpower. Doesn't matter whether you are an IC or a people manager, right? You got to really have a superpower. I used to work for a person in Amazon who supervised technical details, so technically detailed. He would ask which library, what version to that level, and he would be managing a 300 people team, right? But that's a superpower. I've also worked for people the product intuition is super awesome, right? We go to a product review, and we would have prepped for this for many weeks, and he would bring up something that we never thought of, right? So every leader at that level need to have a superpower, right? And many people I've seen in these corporates I've worked, like Coinbase. There was a lot of people whose only job in the last 10 to 15 years work on crypto. Right? They worked on crypto from early days of Satoshi's paper, essentially. Right? So you got to have that superpower. So as a recommendation, what I feel is you got to pick a domain in addition to your career. So for me, it's right now distributed systems, data, and AI. Right? And people want to hire you for that. That's the value you bring into the table, right? Nobody wants to teach you when you're at that level, right? You want to add value from day one, essentially. So a few examples of this I've seen is it could be organizational leadership. I've seen people who are great leaders, right? I've seen people who have a lot of domain expertise on database systems. Tech depth is another example. Business insights is another example. So again, over a period of time, you got to develop this. So think about what your superpowers are, and how do you hone that over a period of time. Does that make sense? Cool. Yeah. Next one is decision making. So in Amazon, we have a process called, we have a bunch of docs. We have a product press release doc, which you have seen is publicly available. We also do a lot of decision docs. And when all the data is available in front of you, it's quite easy to make a decision. When you don't have all the data, how do you make a decision? That's an art. So leaders at every level have to make high quality decisions. And your job is not to make many decisions. It's really to make few high quality critical decisions. So how do we do that? Let me give you an example. So we were launching a product at Amazon. And with most products, we have to go price it. And typically when you go through a pricing process, the document that we write, and how do you price it? Well, you can go and do some market analysis. It'll give you something. But then you don't know if you price it at $1, what adoption will you get? If you price it at $5, what adoption will you get? Or should we do it free? So how do you make a decision? Right? It's hard. So again, the point I'm trying to make is it's more important to know the art of making a decision than the decision itself. Right? So we we're debating if we should give this product free. And then, like one of the things we think about is, look, what is it? Is it a one-way door to go do free? Or is it a one-way door to charge a little bit of money, essentially? So for us, like if we charge a little bit of money, we can always go back to free if we do the optimization, right? So the other way was a one-way door. So one-way door is a great mechanism you can use to make decisions, right? So it's true for like many things too. In career, in job, in life, it's true too. The art of making decisions is super important, right? So this is one of the skills you want to learn as you grow in leadership roles, essentially. Yeah. Does it make sense? Cool. Yeah, we talked about communication earlier, but I want to bring it up a little bit more here, right? Because it's such an undervalued skill, right? Like you have to be a great communicator, especially in the world of AI. If you all do vibe coding, if you all use Cursor or Cloud Code, like the quality of your prompt determines your output, right? So the whole AI thing is forcing you to be a really great communicator anyways. But even beyond that, like there's my pet peeve, like, we are in a 50 people meeting, like reviewing like a product or something like that. And somebody asks, does this work? Okay. The simple answer is yes or a no. But most people would give you a narrative, but still won't answer yes or a no. So this is one of the things that I've learned at Amazon, Microsoft, Coinbase, DataRobot. Like, frugality in communication is super important, right? Because we're all trying to conserve time. You only have 30 minutes to go make a decision, so it's super important. And also knowing the audience is super important, right? Like, if you're making a presentation to your board, you can't go and explain like the details of like where your software stack look like. I mean, of course you can sometimes, but you want to up-level the communication to something that they understand, right? So it's such an important thing to communicate really well. And I think like writing is another important thing. Like I was a terrible writer. Like if you've grown up in India, we haven't spent much time on writing. And one thing you realize is business side is super important. And I learned in Amazon how every doc quality is super important. And you won't believe me if I say this, but we go through 20 to 30 iterations on a doc before we say this is set in stone, right? And it's super, I love that process because it brings a lot of clarity. It brings such a succinct way to answer a question. So it's a very intense process, but I love the process, right? There's a way of writing these docs that makes sense. We use active voices. We kind of avoid adjectives. So anybody who's gone to this Amazon will say, if you see a doc and says, this is an amazing person, right? They'll question, what does amazing mean? Right? So remove adjectives is an important thing. So again, there's an art of writing a doc, which I'm sure you guys do better than me, but it's still an art. So that's the communication thing. And that's true for colleges too, right? Like I'm sure you guys have like presentations that you do and other stuff, right? So yeah. Another thing that I do want to call out, and this is a trap that I've seen, and I have the trap too myself. So as leaders, at some point, you have the trap of being complacent. Right? As an example, I want to give an example of, I'll get to that, but so what usually happens is, look, everything is going well, let's continue status quo. And this is usually a trap, right? As an example, DataRobot was formed 12 years ago. It was the first company to go and launch AutoML. So if you're a data scientist, you bring in your data set, and you can automatically run the data sets against like tens of hundreds of models, and it'll give you the most optimized model for you. But in 2021, the market shifted to agentic AI. The company was still making money and could have stayed the same. But they made a bold step. Look, we want to go pivot to an agentic world, right? And this will have some disruptions, we know that. But then that's a bold step the company took. And look, we've really pivoted well in the last few years, right? We work with NVIDIA and many other customers, and we're seeing a huge traction of good product market fit. So again, the point I'm trying to make is, it's kind of easy to be comfortable So it's important to reinvent yourself every day, at work, essentially. Yeah. Amazon used to call it like day zero, right? Every day is day zero, essentially, right? And there's a building also called Day Zero next to the Spears. Yeah, scaling through others. So when we do promotions for all levels, what we think about is like, is this person someone who can be a force multiplier? What I mean by that is, are you empowering other people? Are you growing other people? Like, are you able to scale through others? Like, or are you just a person working on your thing at a time, right? So many times I've seen promo docs for principal engineer at Amazon where we have said, look, everything is great, but this person is not doing enough mentorship. This person is not empowering other people to deliver more, right? So we're going to work on that growth area and then come back in the next cycle, right? So you see that as you grow in career, one of the things to think about is like, how do I scale through others? Like, I can't be a bottleneck. But what's the flip side of that? Can anybody tell me what the flip side of that? You just empower people to do what they want. What's the flip side of that?
Just focusing on yourself.
Yes, and what could happen, like if you just empower people without checks and balances? Well, think about it like this way. You still have to build some checks and balances, right? So one way that we've done it in the past is like, look, you go run your projects, where we have a project review, where we go and review the design, right? Or we have a few mentor experts who are available for you to review the project. So you want to make sure that you have some checks and balances when you do this, right? Otherwise, it'll be a wild west. You don't want to do that, right? It's finding that balance between like empowering others versus like how do you find the checks and balances, essentially, right? So in my company right now, we have this idea of a pillar and a pod, and it's usually a trio. A trio consists of an engineering manager, a product manager, and a technical lead, right? The trio forms a group of decision-making process, essentially, and it's a good balance because, look, a product manager would want a certain thing, and the engineering manager would say, look, that's not the right thing to do, or vice versa, right? Or the technical lead would say, look, I think the wrong architecture. So that's checks and balances here. So the team is empowered to make the decision, but there's checks and balances, actually. That makes sense? Yeah. Yeah, this is an important one, by the way. I want to say that you guys are building your brand every day that you show up to work or even to college, right? People build perceptions based on their experiences with you. So I have a manager, he used to work at Microsoft, and if I go and ask him, what's the next superpower? He would say, Dinek is deeply technical, right? He's architectural really good. If I go and talk to a manager on Amazon and ask him like, what's the next superpower? He would tell me, he's got an ability to run projects across multiple teams. If I go talk to a different manager, say, look, he's a good people manager. So which one am I? Yeah, it could be, 1, 2, 3, right? The thing is, what's different here is manager 1 experienced one side of me, manager 2 certain aspects of my skills. So you guys are building your brand every single day, right? And as you grow, you'll realize that there is a strong hiring network for all leaders. You want to work with people who you trust. And you know that, look, if there is a thing that requires distributed systems, requires team building, requires like building massive projects, you can call Dinek, right? So a lot of trust comes in because I show up to work, act in a certain way, right? And the best people to market you is your peers, is your manager. Such an important thing. As an example, we had an engineer who worked for 6 months with us. He got really frustrated, started getting promoted in 6 months, went to a different team. Did the same thing there, didn't get promoted. Came back to our team, worked for 6 months again, didn't get promoted. Do you think we'll hire him again? I don't mean from an Amazon perspective, but me as a manager, right? Do you think I'll hire that person? Probably not, right? And so it's super important to sort of like understand this, right? Like, so I work for my manager who I worked for in the past today. The reason I joined DataRobot was the fact that, look, I love the manager I worked for, and he trusts me, so we decided to work together. And this happens a lot, especially when you get to higher leadership levels. So build the brand and know that, look, your colleagues, your managers are your best brand ambassadors. Okay, they're the one who's going to tell, hey, look, hey, this conversation came, like, I need somebody to be hired. Hey, this person is there. Why don't you go and hire him? So it's super important. And then the last slide, and I'm going to stop here after this. We can have any topic you want. I just want to focus on a little bit of being effective in an AI era. A few things that you can think about. So one thing, like, I think few of you talked about this, being adaptable is super important. Like, all organizations are going through a massive transformation, right? A lot of things are unknown. We don't know how things are going to turn out. So be adaptable is super important. Even in my career, like, 20 years ago, we used to work on like C. Now, not many people work on C. Even before that, assembly language is something people used to work on. Nobody works on assembly language now. Not many people work on assembly language now. So it's going to change the way we work, operate. So be adaptable, expect the change. It's a super important thing I feel you should call out. The other thing is, like, build using AI. If you've not used AI, you should go build something. The advantage of all the coding agents and LLM models is that you can even start your startup in a few days, right? Some of the dinners I go to with other startup founders, one of the trends I see today is you don't need like 30 people to go run a startup. They like to keep it very, very lean and small, like 7 to 8 people team is kind of more common now, right? Because there's more productivity. So think about building something. Think about using something AI on a day-to-day basis. So it's not just about the development, but you'll understand like what is the pain point. You understand what tools are being used, right? What are the challenges you're going to face? So it's super important to do that. I would say the third thing is, we talked about a little bit, every engineer has to be a business person, and every business person have to be an engineer, right? So previously, if you are an engineer, you could just focus on like how to make this part of the code super efficient. Now you got to think about like, what's the outcome I want to drive? Because prompting is based on outcomes, right? So think about that. And if you are a business person, you got to think about like, look, I can wipe code something really quickly, but I've got to know a little bit about how the technology works, right? So that's the other, I think, like a mindset change that we want to build in when we do this. I would say the third thing is, we talked about effective communication. We talked about that. Engage with local AI communities. There's a super vibrant community here. There's AI Tinkers, if you know about that. There's a few other communities that you can go engage with. They do like demos, show and tells. It gives you like a different perspective about what things that people are building. And then we talked about like grabbing that opportunity. Like I said, like the moment you go to a corporate, like everybody's going through the transformation process. There's a lot of opportunity coming up. So grab that opportunity, do something. I think that is going to add a lot of value to you all. Right? And I think that was it at that level. Happy to connect with LinkedIn. Is there anything particular beyond this that you all have questions that I can answer? Yeah.
I wanted to ask about, AI is becoming really prevalent. Yeah. And having a superpower is like really important. Like knowing that Dinek is a master of distributed systems. What do you feel, how is it sort of going to hash out with AI there? Is there going to be a level where people feel that they can do everything with AI? Is that going to be a pitfall? What do you think about that?
So I think we are not there yet where everything can be done by AI. I think human in the loop is still a big part of the system.
That's good.
It could in the future, like 2-3 years, it's a big thing, right? So if you look at the AI stack in general, like there is a lot of things happening at the compute level, with all the chip manufacturers trying to get like, powerful compute systems, cheaper GPUs, and more powerful GPUs. More power means you can go train more data, right? And if you can train more data, there's a scientific research says that, look, model can be more effective, right? There is investment on energy. Like how can you run electricity cheaper? At the end of the day, right, like tokens will map to watts of energy, or some kind of watts of energy. If you can make cheaper energy, you can make cheaper tokens and cheaper AI systems essentially. So at that level, you can be an expert. You can be a superpower, could be that level. You can go higher up in the stack. You can go build LLM models. You can go invest there and superpower there. Right? You can still go higher up in the stack. Like there is a lot of work happening on responsible AI, governance, compliance. It's a huge space, and if the regulation things are going to change, you can build a superpower there. But if not any of this stuff, look, you have an idea. If your superpower is business insights, having a product vision, it's really easy to go build something, right? Yeah, so you can leverage that as a superpower and go build something. So yeah, I don't think AI is there where it can solve all problems today, but I think it might be in the future, we don't know, right? There's two camps. One says we'll build AGIs and then that's the end of the world. Right? The other camp says, look, it'll always be like controlled and measured and things like that. Either way, it's only time will tell. Yeah.
Any other questions?
Yep.
I kind of was the start of the session, so I would just wanted to know what your startup is about.
Yeah, so I'm a VP of DataRobot, and DataRobot is an agentic platform. Have you used Bedrock or Azure AI or any of those things? Think about similar things for multi-cloud, for on-premises, self-managed infrastructure. So the problem statement is, it's quite easy to go wipe code and build something on your laptop. But then at enterprise scale, you got to have proper security on top of your application. How do you do that? Right? You got to have compliance on top of that. Right? You need to have a deployment mechanism. And you got to go run the agent somewhere. The agent has to be efficient. You have to trace agent's action. Right? You got to monitor the agent. So all of this stuff becomes challenging for enterprises. So we are sort of the agent workforce platform. If you want to build digital agents, then DataRobot give you that end-to-end flow. Does that help? Yeah.
Awesome, all right. Round of applause.
Yeah. Thank you so much, guys. Yeah.
Yeah,
go for it. Yeah.
Well, so we have another, we can hang out, we can walk around, we have another 45 minutes or so.
Let me take our question. By the way, I'm happy to stay and answer a few more questions if you have time. Right? Yeah.
I know you briefly mentioned your time at Amazon and Microsoft. Now you're at DataRobot. How did you even get into DataRobot in the first place? Was it through connections? Did you guys did you meet up at Microsoft, or how did you even get into DataRobot?
Yeah, so I was trying to work, I was thinking about at some point, I want to work in a place where AI is my bread and butter essentially. So where do I work? Do I work in Amazon? Do I work somewhere else? And then I met my previous manager, and he was at DataRobot. And he said, we have an interesting position that is happening right now. Would you be interested? And then we talked through this. I met the leadership team. I love the leadership team. But I was still trying to process, should I leave Amazon? It's a great job, it's doing great. But then for me, the fact that, look, I'm getting to work on something that is cutting edge of technology, and being able to work on all kinds of flavors of clouds, directly dealing with customers and going through that growth hype curve, even as a business, right? There is a huge amount of growth opportunities as a company here. So I love that. It's definitely connection. It's also domain. It's also the people I talk to and work there.
Do you see the framework of DataRobot is very different from where you worked previously? The corporate world are a little bit different in startup versus big tech?
Definitely different. I would say that, most startups don't have a process, so you can make up the process, right? But I think the other challenge is you don't have a process is a bad thing too, right? So I would say it's a lot more easier when your company is lean to make decisions. That's definitely been a huge thing. And we have a lot more tolerance of making mistakes, right? You can go and launch something, didn't work out, we quickly change, right? It doesn't take us, so Amazon has to think about, a scale that you don't have to worry about, essentially. And working at that scale means you got to have a lot more rigor in going through the process of developing to deployment. But we can do really quickly. It's a huge factor there. Plus, you know everybody in the company, right? If you are a 600, 700 people company, it's easy to know most people in the company. If you are like 100,000 people company, then you don't know, right? So that's the other difference too. So there's pros and cons. Happy to chat off the camera too. Yeah.
Anyone?
Yeah. Yeah.
You said like engineers like nowadays you have to kind of have like the skills and I guess personality of like a business person.
Yeah.
What would you say is like the flip side of that? Like as a business student going to the workforce, what like technical skills do you recommend that we have, especially if we want to go into tech?
Yeah, so most product managers that I've seen Amazon's, Microsoft's, and even DataRobot have an MBA. They come from a business background process. That does give you a lot of different perspective, right? So working backwards from customers is a really good skill to have. Like, how do you kind of like get all the feedback from customers, not one customer, many customers, generalize that into a product, right? And also think about like scale, price, and it's a good skills to have as a product manager. So most product managers I've seen in Amazon, Microsoft are called PMTs, which is product manager technical. So there's always an intersection where PMs and EMs have a debate, or engineers have a debate on, should we do this or that from a technical perspective. So I would say it's still important. I know somebody in Coinbase who used to be early Y Combinator. He's a partner at Y Combinator now. And he's telling me that he was an engineer in the beginning, then became an awesome product manager, then became an engineer again. So I think the more tech skills you have, and my peer in DataRobot today, he was a long-time Microsoft engineering manager. And then he led like UiPath product. So it gives you a very different perspective. Yeah, does that make sense? Is there anything specific that you want to know?
Like I guess just like what kind of were this like actual skills?
Yeah.
Like that would go like even just on the resume.
Yeah.
Like, do you recommend?
Yeah, I would say that if you're thinking about from that perspective, building a product, launching it, even if it's like a hobby project, I think it'll be great to do that because you get to go through the technical process there. But then you're also from business perspective thinking about outcomes and like what does customer want and things like that. Right? Get feedback from your colleagues, ask them to use it, right? And then think about the feedbacks, right? And then think about like how do you deploy this, right? Then you have to think about like which cloud, where do you do that? So part of being a business owner is doing through all this process essentially, right? So that will be helpful.